because think about like LSU and
Sunday,
Southern
yeah.
Cal and in Las Vegas, typically there's one game on that Sunday night that grabs the attention of the nation, be on ESPN or ABC at, 7:30. As much as I like the ability to be the one show in town for that day on opening weekend, I don't like neutral site games in week number 1 personally.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. However, I will say for South Carolina, though, this will be a nice new experience. I wouldn't like this happening every single year, but this is a once in a blue moon type of thing because, next year or 2 years from now, they're playing Miami in Columbia. Then they go to Coral Gables and then UNC and stuff.
But see, the home and homes are better to me because how much more fun would it be to go to Blacksburg instead? And so you're playing in Lane Stadium against Virginia Tech as opposed to, you can go Mercedes-Benz, which Mercedes-Benz is cool, but like the atmosphere of college football is in home venues. And as we expand the playoff out and we have more neutral site games at the end of the year, I really hope we kind of move away from them at the beginning of the year personally.
You got 10 years because that's when you'll get to go to Blacksburg for a South Carolina game.
Again, like why do I need to be almost 40 for that to happen?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But look, I think it's going to be a good game. Like it is going to be the only game on that day, presumably. And then you really do have a chance here to, I think, honestly, man, you should be going 5-0 by your first bye week of the year. There is no excuse. I mean, Missouri might be the only game you could drop. We'll see what happens. We don't know what the teams are even going to look like, but you have no excuse to lose any of these games to Kentucky, Vanderbilt, SC State. Virginia Tech is losing about all their roster right now.
Yeah. The going to Como, a place that Carolina doesn't have a good history at, does give me pause. Like, okay, that could be trouble. It is early in the season. We're going to see what, Missouri loses in the offseason, obviously what they get in the portal. But, yeah, I mean, starting off the year hot and winning everything through the end of September is a very realistic thing for Carolina before you get into the month of October, which traditionally is always going to be the hardest month like it was this year, and it's no different next year as well.
I'll wager to say November's tougher this year.
You think so?
Yes, because you have 2 really tough road trips in there. I will say at LSU, I would assume that game's going to be at night. I would be shocked if it's a day.
Well,
unless both teams just end up being bad.
Well, I was going to say it depends on what teams are doing at that point in the season, but we know these kick times typically before the season now because of the ESPN contract where, we could find out in June that thing's going to be a 7:30 kick.
If that's one of the games I'm thinking South Carolina loses, and Nussmeier's coming back now and stuff.
Yeah. So I asked this question to Preston. So if you're a fan traveling this, because again, going to Baton Rouge, that's an experience and a stadium that Carolina does not get to see a whole lot. Would you rather play them at night when you get the full effect of Death Valley, or would you rather play them at noon where you feel like your chances to win are maybe a little bit better?
Play them at night, because then if you win at night, that's
for sure.
That's a historic feat right there. This team is good enough to go out there and win at night. I just don't. Again, I've never been to Death Valley, and I don't know if it's overrated or underrated or just properly rated environment, but I've always heard it's crazy there.
Preston informed me of this about an hour ago. Did you know that Alabama's the homecoming game next year?
Oh, boy.
Why? Why would you do that?
Why? Literally, just make it Oklahoma. Shoot, make it coastal. Like, oh, my gosh.
And look, Alabama coming in here next year is not a Saban Alabama team. They've lost a little bit of shine. Again, they were on the verge of making the college ball playoff, this year and are still a very good team, but they're losing Milroe. They're going to lose a lot of talent to the NFL. I don't know how good that team is coming in here next year. That's going to be the 7th game on the schedule for them. They could be like 5-2 or 4-3, realistically.
They'll have 2 losses by that point. Georgia and Tennessee are already on the schedule, and I mean they gotta make a trip to. I know everyone's gonna laugh at it, but I mean they gotta get to FSU, and we don't know how FSU is gonna be in Week 1 next year. They just got Thomas Castellanos from BC. And then they got Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin's not. I don't think Wisconsin's going to be very good next year.
And that's a return trip. They'll be in Bryant-Denny for that one.
But as we've seen, like teams can go into Bryant-Denny now, and
they can. It's not the House of Ours maybe that it once was. It seems like
no. So, but I do look October. I don't think it's as tough as maybe November is. Because, I mean, look, but outside that trip to LSU, I think you're going to beat Oklahoma next year, and you get the return trip from Alabama. If that game, I think Roman Harper was saying last night, if that game is at night, I think South Carolina wins. Like,
Yeah.
I think they have a great chance. And then they go into a bye week, which is, at Ole Miss.
And that's the thing now with what we know it takes to get into the expanded playoff between LSU, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Find a way to win 2 of those games, which, again, easier said than done. But, again, you have wiggle room now saying, okay, shoot for 10-2. If that should be your floor, 10-2, right?
Yes.
And say, okay, theoretically, you could lose to Alabama or Ole Miss or LSU, any combination of those 2, and still be okay.
You just honestly, that's what you need to do. You have to go 10-2. Now, to really do so, if you want to get to 10-2, I think you can only really lose through the first 2 months of the year. You can only lose, I think, 1 game. And I'll tell you why. November, you kick off the month on November 1st with a trip to Oxford to Ole Miss.
Yep.
We don't know how Ole Miss is going to be, but given the way they used the portal this year and what they will probably do going into next year, yes, they're losing Jackson Dart, but they're going to get someone else in there, obviously. I think they already have a guy in there. I can't remember his last name, but you need to win that game or the A&M game on the road. And given how tough Kyle Field has been, and given that South Carolina has never beaten A&M at Kyle Field, I like South Carolina's chances to go into Oxford and win in what will probably be a shootout at that point. So you got to split those games, and then, I mean, if you take care of business the final 2 games of the year against Coastal and Clemson, I think you're looking at 10-2.
What would be the most satisfying road win of the season next year, if you can get any of them?
I think at LSU probably, because of what happened this year, and you really do hope that the refs are much better this time. Like, no Jason Autry. I think South Carolina fans will, if they find out he's there. I mean, I think we're going to see some crazy stunt happen to make sure he doesn't call the game. But I do think that's probably the biggest game that South Carolina wants to win next year. Just because, I mean, I think everyone around here knows and feels that they got hosed.
Sure.
And I think that would be some vindication for them for sure.
Yeah, and again, you're playing the majority of your games at home, and I guess technically the Virginia Tech game is a quasi-home game because you're only about 3-4 hours away, playing in Atlanta.
And you're the much better team.
And you're the much better team. So, yeah, I don't think you're going to have any problem taking care of, Virginia Tech there. Of course, non-conference, got SC State, Coastal, Clemson, and then again Virginia Tech. So, again, a manageable non-conference schedule for the most part. Obviously, Clemson's going to be very tough. But if they can continue the momentum from this year, again, you're playing the same teams in conference play, then I think they have a really good shot at being another, hopefully, 9-10 win team again.
Yeah, the one thing I do worry about is I think it's hard to expect whoever they get in the portal and bring in to fill out the holes, especially on defense. It's hard to imagine it's going to be the same level of production. I think we need to go into the next year with the expectation that there might be a little bit of a drop-off, not too crazy, but enough to where it's like, okay, like, these games are not going to be easy peasy. It's going to be a little bit tougher than maybe it was this year.
Yeah, and I think that's why you look at the way the first 5 games set up is pretty favorable. Yes, going to Como
helps you develop.
Is not easy, but yeah, opening with Virginia Tech, SC State, and Vanderbilt, those are teams you can ramp up a little bit. And again, we assume the offense is probably going to be ahead of the defense because you're going to have so many guys gone from this historic defense this year that, having those couple games against not lesser opponents necessarily, but easier opponents than what you're going to face later on in the season hopefully proves to be beneficial.
Which is crazy because the defense was ahead of the offense this year right from the jump. So it would be good for the offense to be ahead of them this time around, and we'll see. I think they could really benefit from that first month of the year if they go 5-0.
Well, Carolina was not the only team whose schedule got revealed last night. It was the entire SEC. We'll go through and point out some other things that we noticed last night when the schedules were revealed across the Southeastern Conference. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Belcher along with you on your Thursday on the Game. Well, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Ty Red and Jack Belcher along with you on your Thursday here on the game. Get back into the 2025 schedules in the SEC in just a moment. But reminder, coming up tomorrow, busy day here at the game. The early game with Preston and Elijah going to be broadcasting live from Palmetto Cards at the South Carolina State Fairgrounds, the card show out there from 6 until 9 a.m. So come by and see them. And then tomorrow night, Elijah's got a busy day. The Love Chevrolet High School Football Scoreboard Show Championship Edition with Justin Hall and Elijah Campbell at 9 o'clock tomorrow as we wrap up the 2024 high school football season here in the state of South Carolina. And he already drinks a lot of energy drinks. He's going to need a few more tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm going to be helping him out today, coming in here for a few hours later on.
Yeah, I didn't know you were doing that today because he's definitely probably going to need that. For sure. Getting back into the schedule, we obviously talked about South Carolina's, and again, when we sit here and talk about a year from now, it's really hard to know anymore because 7-8 years ago, before there was all this portal crossover, you had a pretty good idea of what teams were year to year, right? And say, okay, well, Vanderbilt's really bad this year. They're probably going to be really bad next year. And you could say, okay, well, that's a win. No, we don't know. Vanderbilt could go out there and dominate the portal and go find another Diego Pavia or somebody even better than him and suddenly they're 8-9 win team next year, and they're giving you trouble. So you don't really know. Again, we're kind of sitting here thinking about these teams from the context of what we know them to be right now, but a lot can change between now and next season. When I kind of look at the entire SEC, there's a few quirks that kind of jumped out to me as far as how the schedule is. Do you know Missouri does not have to leave the state of Missouri until October the 18th, almost 2 months into the season until they finally go on the road and play Auburn.
That is asinine. That is absolutely such, I don't even know what to call it.
6 straight home games to start the year with a bye included in there.
And this must be a playoff committee decision right here because this is bogus. I'm looking just at the logos. I mean, who is this purple bear?
That is Central Arkansas.
Oh, real cupcake right there. You know what? Teams can get, I will say, though.
Kansas, that's interesting.
I am glad to see Kansas playing Missouri because that's an
old school rivalry.
That's a good rivalry.
They used to play at Arrowhead back in the day.
That's right. And, hey, isn't it ironic that Kansas literally plays at Arrowhead now because their stadium. Now, I will say the schedule isn't the non-con's actually not too bad on the low key when you think about it. Like Louisiana, they are historically pretty good in the Sun Belt.
Team.
They're probably the top team in the Sun Belt. I know they just lost the Sun Belt title to Marshall, but they're right up there. I mean, this stretch of South Carolina and Alabama back-to-back, though, and there's a bye week in between.
And they play UMass as well.
Oh, yeah, UMass, yeah. I mean, look, they should probably be 5-1, maybe 4-2 after that 6-game stretch. And
yeah,
that's crazy. 6 games at home to start the year.
They had probably one of the softer schedules in all the SEC this year, which is why, even with their good record, weren't ranked very high by the time South Carolina played them. And again, it's the same teams in the conference, next year as it is this year. And then, when you add in the caveat of having 6 straight home games, that certainly benefits Missouri for next season.
Yeah, they won't be ranked very high next year. If they go 9-3 again, they're not getting into the playoff at all.
Speaking of schedules and quirks to them, I look at Kentucky. So over the course of 5 weeks, here's what Kentucky has to do. September 27th, they're here at Williams-Brice Stadium. The next week, they're at Georgia. They get a bye. Then they host Texas and host Tennessee. That might be the toughest 4-game stretch in the entire conference next year.
Don't forget, they get Ole Miss in week 2. This team's going to be drinking that bourbon, getting ready for basketball season by the end of September. It's going to be a daunting schedule.
And look, first of all, I don't know what's happening with Mark Stoops.
I think he gets fired next year.
You would think he might get it fired this year, considering how
it hasn't happened yet.
Far they fell off the cliff, and he missed his radio show the other day, and it just had a lot of weird vibes around there. But it seems like he's going to be the coach next year. But gosh, if they are sitting at 2-5 by the time November rolls around, they might just go ahead and cut bait with him.
I'll make a prediction here. He's getting fired after the. Honestly, he might just get fired after the Georgia game, to be honest, because
it's halfway through the season. They'd be going into a bye week, so
yes,
that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction and say he gets fired by October 4th or after October 4th. So go ahead and bookmark that.
Yeah, that's
listening.
That's going to be tough. Yeah, that's a brutal 4-game stretch for Kentucky. In terms of like the best Saturday across the entire conference, I kind of look at November 15th as maybe the best overall day next year in the SEC. Oklahoma goes to Alabama, Texas goes to Georgia, Arkansas and LSU play, Florida and Ole Miss, and Carolina goes to A&M. Like, those are some pretty high-level matchups that create a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, you got Tennessee playing New Mexico State. You got Auburn and Vanderbilt. I mean, you got Tennessee Tech playing Kentucky. I mean, these are some great games we're talking about on November 15th. Now, I'm just messing. Look, I think every week in this conference is going to be electric, I think. There's always going to be some really insanely good games. But you're right. Like, once we get kind of closer into that month of November, things are going to heat up a little bit. And I think the one game I'm really excited for on that day to see, I think would probably be, what is Florida going to look like by that point in the year? Because they get Long Island to open the year, USF, LSU very early in the year, actually. I mean, look, this 4-game stretch right here might be the toughest of the year. At LSU, at Miami, bye week, Texas at home, at A&M. I think Billy Napier probably gets the can if they don't.
Well, think about it.
I know.
We looked at their
in
slate of schedule this year and said there's no way Napier survives that. And they managed to beat 2 of those teams down the stretch.
But what if they get off to look, they should be 2-0 to start the year, but what if they lose those next 4
I didn't
games?
even know LIU had a football program. I'm assuming they've gotten up to FCS now.
Yeah, I'm assuming so, because I had no idea that was the case. But, like, realistically, man, what if they go 0-4 during that stretch and they're 2-4? Ironically, they get to play Mississippi State, and we thought that was the game that Billy was going to be left on the tarmac. But
if they went 0-4 in their first 4 games, LIU, South Florida.
Well, no, I meant the stretch.
Oh, the stretch. Okay,
yeah, they're not losing to.
I was going to say
they're not losing to LIU.
I don't think they're losing to LIU either. It's one of those things, especially now with the ability to make the playoff by just winning the conference. As long as you're still alive in the conference race, I don't think anybody would fire their coach. So if they can stay afloat,
they'll be fine. But
then they'll keep them around.
Yeah.
And again, how much did the success of the back half of this year earn him good grace? And how long is that leash now? I don't know. But again,
at least most
of us thought he wasn't going to be the coach today, back in the summertime, and he's managed to do that. So
have they still not hired a president?
I don't believe so.
Oh, my gosh. Or appointed one, whatever it is.
Which does make it more difficult when you're trying to fire a coach if they wanted to do that.
Yeah. Now, Texas, I think, has a very intriguing schedule. I think they have 3 of the toughest road games of the year. And I know we just talked about Florida potentially losing some games or whatever and not being very good. I think Florida will probably be about 500 next year. But going to Gainesville is always tough. And couple that with a road trip to start out the year in Buckeye Country at Ohio State, August 30th. You get 3 cupcakes after that, then Gainesville, and then a few more SEC games that you should win. And then a trip to Georgia on November 15th. I mean, what do we think about Texas next year? And they also get A&M at home. Like, I think those are the big 4 games for them.
Here's the thing for Texas. They're probably going to have one of the most talented rosters in the SEC again. So they're going to have an opportunity to beat pretty much everybody on their schedule. Now, going to Georgia, not going to be easy. And again, Georgia's had their number the past 2 times that they played this season. But it's still a manageable schedule like this year's was that shouldn't make their path to the playoff very difficult.
If they were to lose 2 games, let's say they lose to Ohio State and Georgia, their best win, looking at it with a big lens right now from the sky, A&M would probably be their best win. Is that enough to put, like, let's say Texas goes through another stretch of no ranked wins and they lose their big games to Ohio State and Georgia?
If they're 10-2, they'll be in. I don't think that's a debate.
But with losses, no good wins, and losses to Ohio State and Georgia.
I still think those are quality losses. That like Georgia lost to Ole Miss and Alabama, top 10 teams at the time.
Yeah, but doesn't Georgia have good wins on their schedule?
They do. So
they
fair
beat Texas
argument.
twice. But that's the thing.
I don't think the committee's going to leave Texas out if they have 10 wins. Personally,
Probably
we'll see.
not.
Got a lot of football to be played between now and then. That's for sure. We'll hit the bizarre story of what's happening up in Chapel Hill coming up next, because this is something. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Felcher along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Today's Laying the Wood, brought to you by our friends over at Georgia Pacific. Goes to Bill Belichick because he completely blindsided all of us. May as well have been with a piece of wood. With being hired as the coach at North Carolina. If I would have... okay, let's back up here. If I would have told you in 2021 that Stanford would be in the ACC and Bill Belichick would be coaching at North Carolina, which of those two things would you have found harder to believe?
The second option, obviously. Like, I'm shocked that this is happening because, number one, UNC let go of Mac Brown because, number one, I mean, he's past his prime, obviously. Yeah. He's 73, and
right.
You hire a guy who's 72.
Hey, you technically got younger.
Oh, yeah, like you did. But
Technically.
And you have a guy, this is going to be such a headache for UNC because everything that Bill says will have to go. Like, it's his way or the highway. There's no two-bit way around it.
That's my thing. And I thought Emmanuel Acho put out a video last night after this became official that I thought was very insightful. Emmanuel Acho played for Mac Brown at Texas, and he said, I know Mac Brown very well. Mac Brown is really good at coaching, but he's also really good at recruiting and all these other things that it takes to be a good college football coach. Bill Belichick is a very good coach. Bill Belichick is not personable, though, and he's not very good at all the other aspects they're going to have to go into being a great college football coach. Like, again, his pedigree in the NFL speaks for itself. It takes two hands to wear all of his Super Bowl rings. Nobody is denying that. But what it takes to be successful in college is completely different. And he apparently has this 400-page manifesto, Bible, whatever you want to call it, about this grand, elaborate plan for how he's going to run this program like the NFL. Here's my question. How do we think, or why would we expect him to do this better than what's happening at Georgia, what's happening at Ohio State, what's happening in Texas? All these programs are operating like many NFL franchises have been for years. Bill Belichick's having to catch up. He's not going to suddenly come in and have some radical new concept or idea of how to do this.
No. And look, I think he's probably the greatest NFL coach of all time. In wins, I mean, I know Don Shula's still number one, but I think Belichick with his rings and stuff is right up there. And yes, he also has the experience of being a de facto general manager with the Pats for so long. But this kind of reminds me of you remember when Urban Meyer became the head coach of the Jags, and
yep.
He thought he could go into the NFL game thinking like, okay, this will be like college because college has changed so much. Well, he was dead wrong, and he was let go by the end of the year. I think we could see a similar thing happen here, and I honestly think on the deep down, I do feel like this is some sort of way to get his son Steve a chance to be a head coach at UNC. Although I think Steve could honestly pave his own way because he's obviously doing a good job at Washington and all that.
And look, he's in a unique spot of a coach that has never coached at college, now coming down to the ranks after spending his entire career in the NFL. And for the most part, I'm talking about head coaches here, there's only been a handful of guys that have done that, having never coached as a head coach in college football, then suddenly after coaching in the NFL, decide to drop down a rank. Guys like Lane Kiffin, Jim Mora Jr., Herm Edwards, Lovie Smith, to varying degrees of results. Like you'd say that Lane Kiffin's the most successful out of those guys. Now, there's exceptions. Pete Carroll, was originally in the NFL, coached the Patriots before Bill Belichick, then went to Southern Cal, had a lot of success there, went obviously back to the NFL and had plenty of success with Seahawks. He's kind of the exception. More often than not, guys that drop down from the NFL to college usually aren't overly successful because it is so different, especially now with how much power and say the players have. That's a tough thing to deal with.
It is. And the thing is, again, it is hard. I just can't see the Patriot way working on college kids because, I mean, like you brought up, man, these kids, it's not like they're under like. I remember Tom Brady said, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's tough as it gets playing for Bill Belichick under contract. I mean, you can't go anywhere.
Yep.
You can demand trades all you want, but the Pats don't have to get rid of you. In college football, you're basically your own general manager, your own person. You can enter the portal whenever you want. You can quit whenever you feel like it. It's different.
And what have we seen these past couple of years? Guys opting out a month into the season wanting to preserve their eligibility. So I could see a lot of guys saying, hey, I want to play for Bill Belichick and see what it's like. You get a month into that season and we're like, oh, I don't like this. Guess what? I'm self-shirting myself. I'm going to preserve my eligibility. I'm going to go somewhere else. Emmanuel Acho also brought up a really good point that I wasn't aware of, but he said, during the COVID season in 2020, when NFL players had the ability to opt out on the season, the Patriots had more opt-outs than anybody else in the entire league, with, I believe, 8 guys that wanted to opt out. And again, this is post-Tom Brady Patriots, where, again, the superstar quarterback's not there anymore. We obviously know they've suffered in the years since, but that says something to me about the internals of the culture and the relationship between coach and players, that many guys, compared to everybody else in the league, said, no, I don't want to play this year.
Yeah, and I just don't see this working. Like, it could. Maybe people buy into, like, again, the thing with Bill is he doesn't have to do anything to sell you on coming to North Carolina. Like, you get to play for one of the greats, and you get to have, if you want to go to the NFL, the path is there. But if you look at it really deep, you're like, nah, I'll go play for someone else.
But at the same time, the path's already there at Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Texas. Yeah, you're playing for Bill Belichick, but is he really going to get you more ready for the NFL than any of these other programs are? I don't really know if that's true or not.
No,
and know what I mean?
I think if these kids also, want their coach to care about them and stuff, I don't think Bill could care less about anyone.
I don't think this is going to work. Personally, I don't think this is going to work.
This is doomed from the start, I think. And again, I think like South Carolina plays UNC in the back half of this decade. Like,
do you think Bill Belichick is coaching in 2028 or 2029 when Carolina plays them? Do you think a Belichick is coaching them by that point in time?
Depends what the staff looks like. But if Steve's the defensive coordinator at UNC, then yes, I do think Steve Belichick will be the head coach at UNC.
I don't think it's going to work.
I think this is going to be. I think he's going to surprise us, but I don't think it's going to be long term at all.
We'll see what happens. Something else that is surprising: a lawmaker in the state of Ohio is trying to pass a ridiculous bill through its state in reference to what happened the other week against Michigan. We'll get to that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our Ed and Jack Beltry here in the game. I want to tell you once again about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. I tell you about it all the time, and I'll remind you once again, if you notice weird things happening around your home that seem a little bit odd, you need to get those things checked out. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you have any of these problems with your home, you could be experiencing serious foundation issues. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantyconvicts.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate what's going on with your foundation and get it fixed right so you and your family can live comfortably going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantyconvicts.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Belcher along with you here, wrapping up today's edition of the Extra Point. Of course, let's go back a couple weeks. Rivalry weekend. Michigan pulls off the upset in the Horseshoe, beats Ohio State 13-10. Just completely crushes Ryan Day to where he's in this trance after the game. The one of the Michigan players tries to plant the flag in midfield. The fight ensues. There's pepper spray. A whole lot of chaos takes place, and this preceded what was a wild day in college football where a lot more rivalry games descended into madness with flag planting attempts going on. A representative in the state of Ohio, Josh Williams, has proposed the Ohio Sportsmanship Act, which reads, no person shall plant a flagpole with a flag attached to it in the center of the football field at Ohio Stadium of the Ohio State University on the day of a college football competition, whether before, during, or after the competition. Whoever violates this section is guilty of a felony of the fifth degree. Now, a fifth degree felony is very minor. It's like a $2,500 fine and, I think like 20 days in jail or something like that. But still, a felony nonetheless. People already hate Ohio State. This just makes them hate them even more. Because you know how you prevent somebody from sticking a flag in your turf?
Win the game.
Beat them.
Win the game.
Don't give them a reason to. And but they were a 3-touchdown favorite and lost this game to the worst Michigan team they've had in 4 or 5 years, probably. Maybe even longer than that, really.
This is such a loser mentality from Ohio and Ohio State. Like, this is such, oh my gosh. You lost on your own home turf. I mean, you've gotten flag planted a few times now. Don't forget, Oklahoma did it with Baker Mayfield. If you don't like it, win the freaking game. Like, that's all you got to do. Like, it's just so... This is so stupid, to be honest, dude.
So last night, the Hawks played the Knicks in the NBA Cup up there in the Garden.
Yep.
And Trae Young hit the roll of the dice on the Knicks logo in midcourt. And I think it was Jalen Brunson after the game was asked, like, what'd you think? And he said, we should have won the game to prevent that from happening.
Literally.
There you go. It's that simple.
It's such a sheltered and just... overprotective mentality that Ohio is taking here on, their university. It's so silly. I can't believe this is actually a real thing.
Real quick, let's squeeze in a call here. Brian wants to weigh in on the flag law. Brian, appreciate your call. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I heard you reading the wording of the law, and I didn't hear it say anything about an opposing team. So would it be possible, like, if Ohio State wins and Ohio State puts their flag at midfield, could the other team bring them up on this?
Ooh, that's actually...
I know that's not the intention, but with the wording of the law.
Yeah, appreciate the call there, Brian. And that's actually a good point. In reading this back, it does not, specifically say an opposing team doing this. Now, I don't know if you're Ohio State why you would ever plant your own flag on the field. Maybe if you beat Michigan to prove a point, to say, hey, this is our turf and we're claiming it, then I guess, yes, technically they could if this law did come to pass. First of all, I don't think it's going to come to pass. And I feel sorry for the people of Ohio that their tax dollars are being wasted on somebody coming up with something like this. But again, it just shows it's a soft mentality, right? Like the fact that, and again, this is somebody outside the football program, but the fact that they think that's the solution, well, let's pass a law so nobody does that. And like, I guess I get you're trying to prevent fights from happening, but still, you shouldn't have lost the game to begin with.
There are other ways to handle it. I don't know, have more suspensions out there for guys who fight and stuff. That's what I would be worried about. I could care less about the flag planting. Like, if you don't like it, freaking win the game. Easy as that. But I would say, like, the whole fighting and stuff, yeah, that something needs to be done about that because, and it happened all over college football. Flag planting aside, and everyone gets all up in their feelings and stuff when, honestly, most of these guys are probably just transfers coming in. Like, they don't understand the deeper meaning of these rivalries and stuff.
Right.
They want to get all uptight about it. Like, I don't know, man. Win the game, but we got to stop the fighting. That's not a good look for college football.
Well, and then you got the pepper spray, and it just divulged into this.
And the body cam came out the other day, man.
Yeah, that was bad.
This is a real bad look.
It was a whole bad deal around. So I can understand trying to get a grip on this, but charging players with a felony for which, by the way, here's another loophole. Those flags aren't going to go through artificial turf. So you can't really plant the flag. You can attempt to, but it's not going to pierce through.
Yeah.
So that would kind of negate this law, right?
They'll find something else. Do like a snow angel on the logo. I'm sure they'll get arrested for that.
We're just going to keep moving the targets, I guess. It's all ridiculous, but again, this is college football, and this shows you how important it is to a lot of people. So I don't think that law is going to come to pass. If it does, I'm interested to see what happens the next time somebody wins a game at the old horseshoe.
Yeah.
But that'll do it for today's edition of the Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Myself and Wes Mitchell. We'll dive back into the Belichick conversation as well. That's up next here on the game. But first, let me tell you about our friends over at Twin Peaks. You could win an ugly holiday sweater every Friday in December at 7 p.m. Get to the Lodge for more info on how to enter to win, plus score free chips and queso when you come to Lodge wearing your favorite ugly Christmas sweater on National Ugly Sweater Day on Friday, December the 20th. Do you consider yourself a bourbon connoisseur? Twin Peaks is proud to offer an exclusive and extensive collection of some incredibly rare bourbons, whiskeys, and tequilas. Plus, you can check out their barrel selects as well. They're handpicked by their team and bottled just for you. Supplies limited, so check with the Lodge down the street in the Vista to see what they're pouring. And again, as always, we appreciate our friends at Twin Peaks down the Vista for the amazing food, TV as far as the eye can see, and of course, those 29-degree draft beers. Check them out today.